Hey guys, can you hear me and can you see me? Please shout if you can. Let me know if I'm kind of crazy loud or anything like that. It's good to see you guys. It's been a while. Somehow I've managed to be able to grow facial hair now, so I don't look like a 12-year-old anymore. So I feel like I'm now in a position where I can actually tell you some tell you some kind of like mature VFX advice. Cool. Everyone's kind of hearing me. It's all good. Sounding okay? Perfect. Let's start then. Let's start. So just so you know, this is all going to be recorded so that you can watch it back whenever you want. If there's certain kind of something that I talk about this evening that you quite like and you want to watch back, the whole thing is going to be up recorded on my website. So a little about what I'm going to talk about. Basically, the industry, as I kind of said in my newsletter, it's in a really good spot at the moment. Like, I'm seeing opportunities for people that probably weren't there before, basically. Like, people are getting jobs at Weta and ILM that maybe weren't able to before, not only because of remote work, but actually because of the fact that they need a ton of people. And this is happening everywhere. Like, everywhere needs people right now. So oh my god, the beard's already getting some love. Oh my god. So yeah, there's a ton of opportunities right now in the industry. So the whole point is I wanted to just kind of run over a load of kind of like shortcuts that I've learned over my career. I'm just through like observing and seeing what different artists do, and making note of like the best strategies that I've found. Like, wow, look, that one person has done really well, or what I consider to be like really good. And I've just made a note of them, and I'm just going to share those with you now. So some of these ideas have kind of been nicked from other industries as well, but they seem to work in this industry as well. And actually, I've kind of noticed that these ideas that I've stolen from other industries are actually what some really good artists in our industry do as well. So just like learning a nuke technique, you can literally use these straight away tomorrow. Like, I'd really suggest starting to do them. It's really important. So first up is modeling. Now, we know VFX, in the VFX industry, right, like modeling is basically making a 3D object, but that's not what I'm talking about here. So modeling is actually learning from other people's mistakes. So you don't have to make the mistakes, right? So if you see someone make a complete idiot of themselves, maybe in dailies they kind of stand up or disagree with the VFX supervisor and the VFX soup's clearly pissed off at them about doing it, well, you can make a mental note of that, be like, wow, I don't want to do that in dailies, right? That's not a good way to act. So this is something you can do as well. So you can actually model how you don't want to act as well. A good way to do this is, if you're currently working in the industry, have a think about the people that you don't necessarily enjoy working with. They could be leads, they could be supervisors, whatever it is, and just make a note of why it is. What is it they're doing? Are they undermining you? Are they constantly coming over and saying you're doing things wrong, or anything like this? Just make a note of it, and then you can realize that, okay, look, I don't ever want to be doing that stuff because it doesn't feel great. I had a VFX supervisor once who'd basically been doing this his whole career with the best, like, as he was working in the industry, he took the VFX supervisors he liked and he just made a note of everything they did. And then he ended up being a VFX supervisor. And by the time he got into being a VFX soup, he was like, oh my god, like, this is amazing. I've literally got like a playbook I've made myself of how to be the best VFX soup. So it's really important that, like, you can literally just think about the people you enjoy working with and ask yourself why you enjoy working with them, and think about the people you don't enjoy working with and ask yourself why you don't enjoy working with them as well. It's so simple, but honestly, it's really good. It gives you a list as well that you can act on. So something else as well is there's kind of a few artists that I really like. There's Jack Pond, who was a comper, and there's a guy called Andrew Hodgson. Some of you may have heard of him. He's a modeler in the VFX industry. I think he was at D-Day. I think he's like a concept modeler now. But jumping back to Jack, like, this is a guy I taught at university, and he ended up getting a running position at the mill. And within like 2 or 3 months, he was a composter at the mill, which is kind of crazy. Like, generally there's a nice progression, and they try and kind of, they keep that waving that carrot in front. I mean, all companies do this. They wave the carrot in front of your face of like, oh, we're going to give you a composting job. And he managed to get in at 2 to 3 months. So how did he do it, right? So he basically, one of the things he was doing is, while he was working, he would actually talk to the artists who were already in the role he wanted to do. And he'd be asking them for advice constantly. Like, he'd be showing them work he was working on. So, hey, could you look at this, etc. So he'd just constantly be getting people to be aware that he exists, number one, because it's very hard to stand out when you're a runner. So just going over and talking to people and showing them stuff is super handy. He wasn't afraid to make mistakes as well. Like, so he'd show them work even though he knew it wasn't perfect and probably the most professional way of doing it, where he's like, okay, this is my best guess. Like just give me some feedback on it. And again, he then ended up getting mentors and people that looked out for him because they could see he was keen, and all this stuff. And also, he basically just kind of made people aware that he actually wanted to be a composer and that he was really working hard for it. And all of these things together, what happened is, I think it was one night when he was running, they basically needed another comper to do some keying stuff. And what he did is like, okay, I can jump in if you want. And they gave him a chance. They kind of, yeah, it was a bit risky, but they knew he'd already shown that he was interested in actually being a comper, and he'd shown his work consistently. So they were like, okay, yeah, this guy's pretty good. And then he ended up comping that night, doing a good job. He comped on the rest of the project, and then he was in. He was in as a comper, which is really crazy. And now he's gone on to start his own VFX company and stuff. But it was just nuts. Like, this guy was there for 2-3 months, and some people get stuck in running for a while. So Andrew Hodgson's a very kind of similar example of this. For those of you, again, as I was saying, like, he's a modeler. He's really good. Like, check out his ArtStation if you can. So he basically did the same thing. Like, while he was running, he'd just sit with people in the modeling industry. I think it was Guardians of the Galaxy we were on at the time. I was at NPC with him, and he would sit in the modeling department and just model stuff in his spare time. And on Guardians of the Galaxy, they just needed an extra pair of hands, basically, like another modeler. And they knew that he'd been like showing his work to people and asking for feedback. And they knew that, hey, look, we're giving this guy feedback, and he's actually doing the feedback and then coming back to us. Like, he's obviously keen. And they then moved him in, and he ended up doing, like, if you check out his ArtStation, but he ended up doing like one of the main spaceships on Guardians of the Galaxy, which is crazy. So he went from like a runner to doing this insane spaceship, and I mean, I'd imagine that the learning curve was pretty nuts. And I remember talking to him, and he was like, "This is incredible, but it is kind of crazy." But again, he's now like insane. Like, he's worked at ILM, again, DNEG, and he's like the go-to guy now when it comes to hard surface spaceships. And it was just really interesting seeing these two guys, because they were basically doing the same thing, and they'd done exactly the same trick to get into their kind of role that they wanted to get into, but they'd used all the same kind of tricks and strategies along the way. So, and the reason why I share that with you is because you can do this whether you want to be a lead, a supervisor. Like, make people aware that you want to be a lead if you want to be a lead, and start like asking your leads, hey, look, what can I do to practice, etc. And then you'll get mentors in that area, and then they'll want to kind of help you and put you up for lead positions. Same with supervisor. Like, it's the same no matter what role you want. Just make people aware that you actually want to do it. Show you're keen and show you're learning to get yourself there. Super handy. So something else you can do, you might be wondering why the hell you're looking at like 2 jackets here, but this is basically coming down to day rate. So again, I really love to look at other industries and take kind of a whole load of ideas from them and pretend that they're brand new to the VFX industry. The newsletter was one of them, by the way. So I mean, these 2 jackets, right, they kind of look basically the same. But the price of the one on the left is £1,450. And the one on the right is $99. I'll let you convert into whatever currency you are using in your country. But why is that, right? So the one on the left there, I think, is like a Burberry jacket, which is quite kind of high-end fashion, right? And the one on the right, I think, is like H&M or a kind of less kind of crazy brand. So why is the one on the left, and why are people willing to pay that much? Well, number one, they've seen celebrities wear it. Number 2, not many people have got that jacket. There's some sort of like exclusivity to it, right? Like, there's a certain amount, then after that they're kind of gone. The price is very high, so therefore people think, oh, okay, that thing must be actually like a good jacket. Otherwise, why would they charge that much? So you can use it exactly this as a VFX artist. So, for instance, I mentioned that how, okay, look, you've seen celebrities wear the Burberry jacket. Well, you probably have heard of ILM and Weta, right? And these big company names. Or you've heard of Marvel, for instance. So you could be a compositor who's worked on Marvel, and now you've got the Marvel brand behind you, and you seem like a better comper. Now, that's not to say you're not a better comper, but I'm just saying, like, if you take 2 compers who are exactly the same, the one that's worked at the NPC, DNEGs, ILM, like frame stores, Wetters, and have worked on the big Marvel films and Lord of the Rings films you've heard of, they're going to seem like a better comper than the one that hasn't worked on that stuff, even if they're the same artist. Another thing as well is price. Like, if you actually price yourself higher, sometimes you're more likely to get the better shots, because now you cost more for the company, and they're expecting you to be a better comper. It's kind of nuts, right? And then you get the better shots, which means you get better shots for your show reel, which means you can shot. It's this like weird cycle, but it's exactly the same thing as what the fashion brands are doing in order to become popular. Another thing they do as well is like they burn the stock so that it's very hard to get, and again there's some exclusivity. Well, you could always be booked out, right? Like you could always be booked out, and if someone wants you, then oh, okay, yeah, I've got a couple of months here. So they're kind of you're very hard to get hold of and pin down. And I mean, not like in terms of replying to emails, but you're very hard to get in terms of you're always being booked up because you're so popular. Now, for all they know, you could be taking 6 months out holiday a year and just be busy 6 months. But again, if you keep that mirage, I mean, they burn stock like fashion companies to keep this mirage up. So you could do something very similar and say, hey, look, I'm booked up at the moment, but I'll be available this week, etc. And again, it makes it seem like you're kind of constantly in demand. Now, again, some people are in this situation where they are in constant demand and they can charge more because they are good. But I'm just saying like this has something to do with it as well. Like the psychology totally has something to do with it. And actually sometimes it's worth getting a name or a film on your show reel, and then you can jack up your rate afterwards. Not to say that you should undersell yourself, but sometimes it's worth going, okay, look, you know what? I'm going to earn a bit less money than I was doing in adverts and go work on a film. Get that stuff in my reel, and when I go back to adverts I can charge way more because now I've shown that I can work on the best stuff. So it's super useful. Like, it's so simple, and again, you're seeing this in every single industry, but it's just really, really important. Something else as well, same idea. So this is a piece of art I own on the left. It's a screen print, and the one on the right here is a Banksy, basically. So, I mean, this is the different. I personally prefer the one on the left, but it's kind of a subjective thing, right? Like, some of you will like the one on the right, some of you will like the one on the left. But actually, like, the difference, like, why is the one on the right worth £440,000? That's kind of crazy, right? And now it's not down to, oh, the paint costs more, because, I mean, how expensive could this paint be? So it's down to, again, like the story of it, right? Like, so the exclusivity of a Banksy, there's the mystery about him, and all this kind of stuff. So again, it's just a story, and it's the brand again. So it's really important to think about this stuff, and I'll touch on this more later on. Next up is practice. So you basically never want to learn, like the worst time to learn anything new is when you're under pressure and you're doing crazy hours. That's like the worst time because you're stressed, you end up not learning it properly, and nothing ever like sticks in your head at all. So that's the worst time to be doing this stuff. Another thing as well is kind of touching on that is you want to make contacts way before you need them. So again, like you don't want to learn something the minute you need to know it. You want to be learning it beforehand. Same with contacts, like make contacts in the industry and at companies that you want to work for way before you actually apply there. So by the time you need them, or by the time, let's say, COVID hits and there's way less jobs in the market, okay, look, you know what? I've already built my network. I've been doing it while the times were good, and now I can start emailing out and applying. So it's really important, this. And if you do this, it gets you way ahead of the competition because everyone's waiting up until the last minute to do everything. So all you got to do, I mean, even if you just did it like a couple of months ahead of them, you'd still be way ahead of the curve. I personally, by the way, and this again is talking about students, but my students I teach privately, I always get them to just be emailing, and we basically email before any university students email, because all the university students email to get jobs at like June, July time, because that's when their courses finish. So I get my students to email before that, and now it's like they've got way less competition. So it's exactly the same here. Like you want to be building a network before everyone else is suddenly trying to find a job, because then you easily beat the competition. There's a quote. So the more you sweat in peace, the less you bleed in war. And all this is, again, is just like practice when times are good, so that when times get bad, you're set and you're ready to go, and you've kind of you're in a good position. So doing the work is an incredibly important one. The amount of time I've seen people in the industry and kind of people that are learning VFX and wanting to get into the industry, like what they do is, let's say they want to learn something. They'll like passively have a video, a tutorial on one screen, and while they're kind of doing something else, they're either working on a shot or they're just doing something, maybe even like watching something else, like watching some Netflix show, and then they feel like they're not Like they end up not learning anything basically, and it's the same as like procrastinating. It's kind of crazy to me. So like it's a bit like if you wanted to be a professional cyclist or a swimmer, let's say you want to learn to swim, you wouldn't just watch YouTube videos of people swimming and tutorial videos of like swimming tutorial videos and then not get in a swim pool and think, oh yeah, okay, I know how to swim now, I've watched the video. No, like you got to go into Nuke and actually practice the stuff you see. So this is incredibly important to do, because the amount of times I've seen people, again, like there's a new thing that comes with Nuke and they watch the tutorial video, the Foundry kick out, and then when it gets to the time of actually using it, okay, they're screwed because they don't actually like know it. They've never actually had to do it. So super important. Just practice the thing. Don't have it on a video to the right of you. Actually, or like on a screen while you're doing something else. Actually go through and open up Nuke or whatever software it is and just actually go through the motions. A little aside actually that I've just remembered is if you want to go a little bit further on this, something I do is called spaced repetition. Just Google spaced repetition and get the Anki app as well, ANKI, and it's basically like flashcards, and it's a really handy way to learn and remember things. So that's something I do personally, and it is super handy. So I'd really suggest doing that as well. But yeah, again, too many people are just like passively watching videos, tutorials and stuff, and think they know it. So speed again is an incredibly important thing when you're working in the industry, simply because it's the best way to get ahead, right? Like you could either be like two people, one person might be very good going in to the industry and be thinking they know everything and they're super confident, and there might be another person who maybe isn't as kind of good, but they're willing to learn and they're going to soak up knowledge and kind of get better way quicker. And that person, the person who like accelerates and has got their speed up and the momentum up, is going to increase way more and get their day rate up, and they're going to be way more productive for the company because they're willing to learn. So try and get your rate of learning up. It's the best way to get your day rate up. Again, I talk more about this later in regards to how to get your day rate up. But this, I mean, I've spoken a little bit already, but this is actually something you can do. Like, just get your pace of learning up, because that's going to get your rate up way quicker. And again, see what is useful in the company. Like, is it green screen key stuff mainly, or is it matte paintings that you have to grade into a shot, or is it look development? Try and work out what it is that's going to be like the biggest bang for buck, so to speak, and just get really good at that and start working up. Another thing to think about as well is, like, let's say you could be earning an extra £100 a month if you learn, I don't know, if you're better at keying, let's say, a little bit better at keying. And by better at keying, you might just need a few more tools at keying. So if you could earn an extra £100 a month, well, that's $1,200 a year, obviously. And actually, every day that you put it off, or every month you put off learning that, you're basically losing £100. That's what you're doing, because you could be at a point where you're charging those bigger rates. So it's not like you're not ever gaining that money, because you're probably actually able to learn that stuff and charge the bigger day rates. So a good way to think about it is, okay, I could be at a senior level right now. I'm not, because I haven't upped my momentum and I'm not learning as much. Therefore, it is costing me X amount of money. And again, in a second, I'm going to be sharing some rates with you, some day rates, and that you can literally work out, okay, look, it's costing me £100 a day potentially, because I'm not at senior level, and a senior level would be having more tools in keying or something. So it's literally costing you money. And that's why the quicker you can learn this stuff, that's when you stop basically losing money, as soon as you learned it. So connection, I mean, with coronavirus times and working remotely, connection is obviously an even bigger, more important part of what we do right now, because you're not in an office, headphones on, and like you're not really talking to anyone, but actually they can kind of see you're working. Now it's really about like, okay, look, I've got to really make sure people know what I'm doing. So the thing I always found interesting in the VFX industry is you basically have dailies, where you go in and you look at your shot with a VFX supervisor or your 2D supervisor. Now, you're barely ever seeing the VFX supervisor really. Like, you're only really seeing them in dailies, maybe 2, 3, maximum like 10 minutes a day, I'd say. And you could give that VFX supervisor this insane impression, right? You could make them feel like, wow, this guy's really on the ball, or this girl's really on the ball, and they know what they're doing, and they're super confident, and like they're just hitting the notes, and they're doing all the stuff, and they know all about the shot. You could be the worst comper in the world, but all you're going to do is look good for 10 minutes with your VFX supervisor in Dailies. And again, they've got this completely different impression of you. Now, so what you want to do is you want to prepare for Dailies. No one does this really, and it's something I like to do because it just makes you stand out, and it's like minimal work, and it's just really great way to, again, you're going to see them 5 minutes a day. You just prep a little bit at the start so that you know all about your shot. You know that, hey, look, the lighting's going to be late because this guy went on holiday or this guy went on holiday. You know that there's errors here, here, and here, and here's how you're going to fix them. Here's some questions I have because this shot you've asked me to match to, maybe the client has a note on, would you like me to do it? All of this stuff, if you come and just like, I used to think of it like you're a lawyer and you're going to court, right? And you've got to really have all your notes with you. Think about it like that, and then go to Dailies and you can completely give them this amazing impression of you as an artist. And again, you could be let's take two compositors. I can guarantee you the one that the VFX supervisor was like, wow, okay, look, that person was really good in Dailies and quite fun to be around. Like, another thing as well is get your personality in there. Like, the amount of times, all a VFX supervisor does is they have to review shots most of the time and then talk to clients who could be a bit of a pain in the ass, right? So if you can make it a bit light and make it a bit fun and trying to come up with ideas and tackle problems yourself, it's something that the VFX supervisor might end up looking forward to having you in Dailies. Which I know is a weird situation, but now when it comes down to them picking their team or choosing who to hire, you could be the same compositor as someone else, but now because the VFX supervisor remembers you being really great, you've now potentially got the job, or you could even charge more. And again, you're the same comper, just the VFX supervisor got a way better impression of you because you spent 5 to 10 minutes before Dailies actually prepping your stuff. It's like, it's so important and no one's doing it. It's like, all this stuff I'm showing you now, by the way, is stuff that like I've used all the time, and it makes you stand out. It's kind of weird, but the reason it makes you stand out is because no one else is doing it, because everyone's so focused on learning this brand new one nuke technique that, whereas actually if you focus on all the other stuff as well about being a VFX artist and a nuke compositor, it's more to being a nuke compositor than just using nuke. So if you can focus on the other stuff, I mean, obviously learn nuke, but if you can focus on some of the other stuff as well, it's way easier to get ahead because no one else is doing that other stuff. Whereas everyone's trying to learn this one tiny, minuscule technique in nuke that they might have to use at one point in their career. But again, learn all this other stuff that no one's focused on. It makes it more interesting as well. Order is an incredibly important thing. And I've spoken about momentum a few times in this talk. And this is kind of like what order's about. So if for instance, I'll give you an example. I really wanted to write for 3D World, the magazine. I'd kind of read it when I was a student, and I really wanted to write for them. Now, if I'd emailed them when I was studying, and I was kind of brand new learning nuke, they were never going to be getting back to me, right? Because I'm a student, I've got no kind of qualifiers. Again, coming back to that like branding stuff I spoke about earlier, I've got no big name behind me. I haven't worked on any big stuff, so I'm just kind of, it's very hard to stand out in that respect. So what I did is I basically emailed another company called, I think it was CG Tuts Plus. I don't know if they're still going. And I asked, hey, look, could I write you a nuke article for your website? And this was a website mainly for hobbyists. So it's kind of people that were just using nuke. Maybe they're interested in filmmaking using nuke as well. But it was really amazing because what I could do is I just got into MPC as a junior, and again, I still wouldn't have been able to write for 3D World because they look for more kind of seniors, leads, mids, people that worked on big stuff as a comper, and they wouldn't want like a roto prep artist writing them comp stuff. So again, I wrote for CG Tuts Plus, and because my competition was basically a bunch of other nuke hobbyists, I mean, it's a bit unfair, but I basically wrote this like article that ended up being the most read nuke article and tutorial on their website because, again, compared to the other stuff, it was just way more professional, and I had the NPC name behind me. I mean, it probably wasn't any better written than theirs. I'm not too good at writing. That's why I do this kind of stuff rather than writing. But yeah, it's kind of crazy. Just because I had the NPC name behind me, right? It kind of suddenly it made me seem like I knew what I was talking about. So then I wrote for them, and I got the most read article. And then I could go to 3D World and be like, I've written the most read article on this website, a nuke article, and I would love to write for you as well. And they instantly snapped it up because, again, I had an example of my work. I'd show them what I could do, like I was talking about earlier with Jack and Andrew, kind of showing what they could do to people. To people, kind of showing what they've done and the work they've put in. And also, like, I could say, look, I'm at NPC, so I had the qualifier there, and it was the most read, and I could show them the stats. So it was like a no-brainer for them. They weren't taking any risk then. So it's really important to get the order right. If I had, for instance, emailed them when I was at university and I was studying, they wouldn't have let me do it, and then the momentum would have been lost, and I'd have got a bit depressed and been like, oh, it's really tricky, and they're never going to let me write for them. But getting the order right so you can build momentum is incredibly, incredibly important. It's super important. By the way, any good lead in the industry will be aware of this, or should be aware of this. And if there's a junior artist, they should be giving them slowly incremental shots that get harder and harder. Basically like a video game. If I'm mostly like, think of it as levels of a video game, they should slowly be giving you trickier and trickier keys and stuff like that. It's not always the case, but build momentum is incredibly, incredibly important. Like it keeps your motivation up and everything. So it's super important to do that. So be aware of the order of things. Like make sure you're not doing things the wrong way around. So junior, mids, and seniors. Something I kind of get annoyed about is when you see compers who have been in the industry for like 10 years and they say that they're senior compers, and actually you've worked with them and they're not senior compers at all. And what's happening is these people are basically, they've worked in the industry 10 years, but they've basically been living off that 1 year of kind of knowledge. Their first year of knowledge, they really went for it and learned everything. And then the next like 9 years, they basically just relied on that knowledge and didn't learn anything new. And that doesn't make you a senior comper. A senior comper is basically, can you tackle the trickiest shots without having to ask any questions? Or can you set a look of something without having to ask any questions? And that's why, by the way, when COVID hit, I mean, it's still obviously here a little bit, but again, things are getting really, really great in the industry and everyone's kind of hiring right now. But when it was really tricky, companies were pretty much just hiring seniors, because what they wanted to do is they were new to remote work. So they just wanted to give you a shot and say, okay, look, you just do it, basically. And we still had dailies and stuff, but they didn't want to have to kind of sit next to someone and talk them through how to do a key or open up nuke or pipeline stuff. So that's why you were seeing senior guys still being, and girls still being hired in COVID times. It was just because they didn't want to kind of, they didn't want to have to like handhold someone through for a shot or take a risk. They just wanted to give them the plates. But again, some senior compers were found out, and then they just couldn't do the job, basically, when they were working remotely, and even when you work in the office, there's some senior compers that they're just only good at like the easy stuff, basically, because again, they haven't got the knowledge, they haven't learned anything new. And that's the same, by the way, with like juniors and mids. Like the great thing I think about this industry is actually, if you can do stuff to a senior level, it doesn't really, I mean, obviously, yes, it matters a little bit how long you've been in the industry, but no one cares about your age. Like all you got to do is, as long as you can do the senior shots, then you're a senior, and then you can start charging the senior rates. Like there is no, oh, you've been in the industry now 5 years, so you're a senior. It's just down to how good are the shots you can do, basically, and how complicated are they. Senior, generally you could tackle any shot. Mid is kind of, you could probably tackle any shot, but you're going to need a bit of help. And junior is basically, you could tackle generally the simpler shots like green screen stuff. Probably not full CG. So day rates. So I unfortunately don't have the US and a few other places. I did email around, but people didn't get back to me in time. But these are the current like Europe and UK day rates that people are getting for TV and film. So again, as I was saying earlier, like if you haven't, let's say you could learn something that would get you to that mid-level. So what's that? So 220 to 260 there. Let's say you could learn like a few little tricks. So you spent like 4 weeks really getting good at keying. Then you could charge now 40 euros a day more. Well, that's a pretty big whack a month. That's like 800 euros a month, right? That's like your rent, basically, which is kind of crazy. And again, you're literally, if you're not learning like how to get yourself there, it's costing you money. Like it's honestly costing you money, because you could be earning that rate. Again, especially at the moment when things are slammed. So have a look at that. Again, this is all going to be on the notes, but it's just useful to know. So these are the notes in TV and film. Generally in ad, the rates are going to be maybe 1.5 times these. Generally, it kind of depends where it is and how long the contract is, but these are the rough rates. By the way, as well, if your contract is longer, sometimes your rate will be slightly less. And I don't mean less like 220 to 260, for instance, for a junior. Like 260 might be, hey, we've got a contract for 3 months. 220, they might try and push you to 220 because, hey, look, we're going to give you a 6 month or a year contract, so we need you to do 220. You can push back on these, but it's just good to be aware of this stuff. If you feel like you're being underpaid at the moment, then you've got two options. You could either talk to your company or you could basically jump company. That's basically your options. Always, you have those options. So there you go. Hopefully that's what you guys want at the moment. If not, then you're gonna have some talks with your company. Another thing at the moment is because companies are so slammed, so you could either try and get your rate up, which is obviously can be really great because now you're earning more a day, which is always good. But also, if you're happy where you are, then what you could do is you could actually just ask for a longer contract. So generally when you're in the industry, you're going to be kind of contracted per show. So it might be like a 3-month show, or they might give you a 3-month contract. Generally it's a 3-month contract to start with, see if you're any good, see if you get on with people, and then they might extend you if they have more work or if they like you and they think you're good. So if you're at a company that you like, I always like to kind of 1 to 2 months before my contract's over, I will actually say to them, hey, look, like, do you think you're going to need compositors after this? Like, would you want to extend me? Have you got work coming in, etc., etc., etc.? Like, it's really good, again, do it before anyone else asks. So, like, if everyone at your company asks 1 month before their contract ends, ask 1.5 months before your contract. You want to get ahead of the curve so you don't end up being like, oh, well, we've booked all the compos we need, right? Get ahead of the curve on that stuff. But right now, things are so slammed. Like, I've heard people who have 4 months left on their contract and they ask, and it's like, okay, yeah, we can extend you for another year if you want. So they've got a year and 4 months now. So again, things are so slammed. So if you're liking where you're at the moment and you're happy with the money you're on and you think it's fair, again, look at the day rates here and maybe ask a few people around you. But if you're happy with the company and everything, then you can ask for an extension. And again, generally I would ask 1 or 2 months before my contract ends, but actually you can do this, like you can do it now. If you feel like your company's slammed with work, just do it now, just get ahead. It's really important. So be an Apple product. Well, what do I actually mean by this, right? That's kind of a bit of a weird thing to be. So Apple actually have people who design the experience of buying the phone. Like when you go into an Apple store, all that has been designed. They're kind of very biblical, right? The Apple stores, but everything has been designed there. Like it's supposed to give you a feeling when you walk in that shop. Same with opening the box. Like when you open the box, it feels premium. They don't just kind of like launch the phone at you and throw you out the shop. I mean, that's the same. You'd end up in the same situation. Congratulations, you've just got your brand new phone, but that's going to leave you with a completely different feeling, right? Than the oh look, I've got this amazing box and they've talked me through and I've been taken care of. So you can totally think of this with your career as well as a VFX artist. Like, what do you want the experience of having to hire you, having to work with you to be like? Are you, when maybe some long hours come in, are you one of the people who gets really arsey with everyone and blames every other department and you're trying to sidestep doing kind of and fixing stuff? Or are you the person who kind of takes control and tries to work out how to problem solve with the 2D supervisor? Or another thing as well is like, are you trying to keep morale high? Like another thing that I used to kind of think I used to use quite a lot is I'm a little bit more outgoing, I'd say, than people in the industry. So when times were kind of pretty crazy, and especially in the office, like I kind of miss this now, but if you'd end up doing nuts hours, it's been a while since I did any nuts hours, but when you used to do nuts hours, everyone would just be delirious. Like everyone would just laugh at everything, and being able to keep morale high is a hugely important part, again, of being a compositor, right? Like if you've got 6 other senior compos in your room, let's say, or in the office with you, and you're keeping morale high and keeping them working to a high standard, well, congratulations, you've just now upped their level, so now you're worth more to the company. It's super important to think about. So what is it like to work with you? Like, think about all of this stuff and think about how you can improve this. Again, how are you in dailies? How are you like dealing with the supervisor? How are you getting your feedback? Do you push back and fight all the notes, or is it more of a collaboration? All this stuff is stuff you should think about, and you can actually design a little bit. Like, don't let this, again, don't just focus on the nuke comp bit. I've got to learn this latest technique. That is one part of being a compositor. One part. So next up is risk. In your career, you're going to have a ton of risks, obviously. No one spotted a bloody virus traveling around the world and sending everyone home. But there's going to be all sorts of other risks as well. So what you want to look out for are things called asymmetrical risks. And what is that? Well, basically, it's where the upside is way bigger than the downside. And they're worth looking up. So for instance, a asymmetrical risk might be, okay, I'm going to take a 3-month contract to this company because they're offering me double the money that this other company, that my current company is offering me. Well, there's a risk there that they may get rid of me after those 3 months and I have to find a job again. But actually, they may end up extending me and now I'm on double what I'm earning at the moment. So there's very little downside because worst case scenario, you can just go back to your current rate. The upside is obviously you can just kind of earn the big whack. Another thing as well is like, you could end up going to work at a bigger company, right? And you might be thinking, oh, actually, I don't know if I want to work for a bigger company on the Marvels, etc. Let's say if that's something you want to do. It's absolutely fine if you don't, but let's just pretend. So an asymmetrical risk there would be, okay, what are the upsides? Well, you get that on your showreel or CV. Maybe you get to learn from some really good people at the company you're going to be going to. So that's the positives. What's the worst case scenario? Well, worst case is you could just leave and go back to working on the stuff you're working on at the moment. It's absolutely fine. As long as you explain it to the people you're working with, it's absolutely fine. So these asymmetrical risks are seriously worth looking out for and taking advantage of. Another one that I don't see enough is kind of just emailing other people in the industry and asking for advice on their showreel. This maybe doesn't come down to people that are already in the industry, but if you're a student, like, just email people in the industry and ask for feedback on your work. Again, the upside is they may be in a position to offer you a job if they like your work. They may be in a position where they can give you some feedback and your work gets better. What's the worst case scenario? They don't reply. You've lost like a minute of your life. That's nothing. So look out for this stuff. It's super important. Again, asymmetrical risk, like, email a bunch of people at companies you want to work for before you need those connections. And now you've lost nothing by doing it, and you've got everything to gain potentially. So it's super important, this, and like, again, not enough people are thinking about it. So you've got to rig the game as well. And this is really, really important. So I had a friend of mine who basically got stuck at a company because they wouldn't update, so they wouldn't basically nudge his salary up. He'd been there for like 3 or 4 years. You guys, some of you might be in this situation where you've been at a company 3 or 4 years and they basically wouldn't increase his salary, or they were by 1 or 2%, and he was kind of getting massively underpaid. So he would have left the company and gone somewhere else, but by this time he kind of had a family and he had a mortgage, so he was paying his kind of house off every month, and he didn't have that many savings in the bank. So he basically needed a safe job, and the safe job for him was sticking where he is, underpaid, viz, again, going to that other company and getting maybe double his salary, but on a 3-month contract. And if the 3-month contract fell through, he'd then have to search for work, and if he couldn't find work, then he wouldn't be able to pay his bills. So you want to rig this thing so that you can take these risks when they kind of show up. So again, at the moment, there might be a great opportunity at a company. Well, have some money in the bank. So for instance, what I do is I like to have either 6 months or a year savings in the bank, and it takes a while to save that up, obviously. But if you can have a 6-month year expenses just in the bank, then you can take a risk on like a 3-month contract with way more money, or a 3-month contract at a company that you've always wanted to work for, and they don't know if they're going to have work afterwards, right? You can totally take those risks if you've got those living expenses covered. It's really great because you can just take advantage of all of the possibilities that come up. Another thing as well is generally as I was talking about earlier, like the shorter the contract is, generally the higher the day rate is, right? So you might negotiate that, okay, look, it's only a 3-month contract, so I want a bigger day rate because I'm going to have to find work afterwards. Well, what generally happens is, as you guys in the industry will know, the client makes changes and the deadline gets pushed, and okay, it's actually finishing in 1 or 2 months' time, and now you're stuck there on the same rate you came in on. And you're on a decent rate, and you've been there for 5, 6, 7, 8 months. And if they really like you, they'll want to hold on to you. So it's again one of those things that I had a friend once, and he would go just for the last month of a show and do crazy high rate. He'd be there on the last month of a show, and they're knowing that the show always gets pushed and they always want an extra 1 or 2 months working on the thing, and then you'd be on this really great day rate for 4 months and you take a few months off basically. So again, you can totally take advantage of this. He could do this risky stuff because he had some money in the bank and he was fine. He just wanted to do it to earn a bit more. So know your odds and play accordingly. This is basically all about, like, again, as I was talking about earlier, asymmetrical risk. Odds of emailing someone in the industry and getting a reply might be quite low if they're at certain companies or maybe they're quite busy. But actually, again, you haven't got anything to lose, number one. And just know your odds. Like, okay, the chances are I'm not going to get a reply, which means you've got to send a fair few emails, right? That's all that means. It doesn't mean you shouldn't send any. It just means you probably got to send more. If 1% are going to reply to you, then you've got to send 100 basically to get one back. So just know your odds and play accordingly. And don't get disheartened if it doesn't go your way, because the odds were against you to start with. So it's absolutely fine. So being present is super important. So you want people to know who you are and what you can do. Again, coming back to Jack Pond and Andrew Hodgson earlier, like, people are going to know you basically and know what you're about and know if you're any good or not. Now, a lot of this stuff, if I'm honest with you, can happen because people refer each other to different companies. And that happens a lot, where recruiters will just ask their comp team, hey, has anyone got any friends who are good, or worked with anyone who is good, who they recommend? And that's obviously part of it. And that's being present a little bit because that's your network that I spoke about building earlier. But actually, you'd want to make sure you've got a website, and you want to make sure you've got a LinkedIn, and you've added recruiters and people at the companies you want to work for on LinkedIn, and ask them questions, etc., 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 or just send them your reel and ask for feedback. Again, people are going to know you exist. You can't just kind of like be good in a cave. It doesn't matter. You can be the best nuke comper in the world. If no one knows you exist, then you're never going to get a job. So it's really important. So again, luck is obviously going to be a huge part of this thing, as is risk. So you can actually make your own luck a bit. Obviously, there's horrendous things that happen, and it's just, okay, like, that's just unlucky. But at the same time, you can kind of build your own luck a little bit as well. So luck is basically just where opportunity meets preparation. So if you break that down, opportunity, well, how do we build more opportunities for ourselves? Well, we basically build up our connections and our network. So when you work at a company, make a really good impression. Again, be that Apple product, make a really good impression at the company, not only by making the shots and stuff like that, but actually being fun to work with. So you build up your network, which is then going to get you more opportunities. And then the preparation bit is get really fucking good at nuke, basically. It's the preparation to be a really good nuke comper, is the preparation bit. So now if you've got an opportunity to go work somewhere, or an opportunity to do this kind of, I don't know, cool project you've wanted to do, you've prepared enough and you're ready to take it on board. The worst thing in the world is where you see, or where you get, like, see people, or where you get given an opportunity, and yeah, it's an amazing opportunity, and then maybe you give it a go and then they just aren't happy with you, basically. It's just because you didn't prepare enough. So it's super important that, like, luck is just opportunity meets preparation. Be aware of that. So make as many opportunities as you can, and then prepare a hell of a lot as well by getting as good at nuke as you can. So again, super important. So contrast. This is kind of down to psychology, and this is something I've stolen from psychology, but it's really important as well. So our brain basically works by comparing stuff to other things. So what do I mean by that? Well, I know that I'm a tall person because I've been around people who are smaller than me, and actually a lot of people are smaller than me. I'm not a freak. I probably couldn't play in the NBA, but I'm definitely taller than a lot of people. So there we go. And I've got a regular standing desk to prove it, so it's all good. But again, it's all contrast. So, like, you can use this a whole bunch of ways in the industry, for instance. Like, and you see this a hell of a lot, actually, where a compositor or a VFX artist has been at a company and they think they're really good, and maybe the company's like mediocre, kicking out kind of okay but not great stuff, and they think they're this like insane comper. And the problem is, like, they are very good compared to the people in their company, but in regards to the general market, they're maybe not that good, because they've been comparing themselves to the people in their company, but not to everyone else. And now they think they're kind of amazing. Another thing as well, another way you can use this is if anyone ever asks you, like, how long something's going to take, like a comp job or a roto prep job, like, just double the time in your head. Because now the great thing is, like, if you do it in the time you thought you were going to do it in. So you double, let's say you think something's going to take a day, and you say, okay, I think this is going to take me 2 days to do. Now, if it takes you a day, you look like a hero because you just gained them a day. So you look like, oh my God, look, this person's really quick. This is amazing. And if you don't get it done in a day and it takes you a day and a half or 2 days, well, now you're covered. Like, you don't look like you can't hit your deadlines or anything like that. It's fine. So just double it, and now you look like a genius. So again, it's the contrast thing. You can give them whatever number you want. Don't go nuts with it, because people can call you out if you start going, oh yeah, to do this little rotor of a hand, it's going to take me like 5 weeks. You can't do, and then you do it in an hour and you're like, oh my God, I'm this god of roto. You can't be doing that. But again, just double the time you think someone's going to take you, just to cover yourself. So strategy. If I'm honest with you, when you're in the industry, you kind of have 2 options. Now, you can jump between these 2 strategies, but these are the overall strategies I have seen people do. The first one is you can either just stay at one company and stay there forever, like 15, 20, 25 years. And these are the people you'll see in the VFX supervisor positions. Basically, they've like stuck it out and they've been at the company 20, 25 years. And what happens is their salary goes up very, very little. And slowly it goes up and up and up and up, and then it just keeps going up, and then it goes up quite exponentially when they end up in the VFX supervisor position, and then it'll probably get stuck again until they win an award or they go client side or something. So that's one strategy. Or what you can do is you can hop companies every time you feel like you're going up a role. So okay, I'm a junior artist at a company. Well, now I've worked at the company for 2 years, let's say, and I'm doing mid-level shots. Okay, now I think I'm a mid-level. Talk to the company, explain, I think I'm a mid-level now, I'm doing these shots, blah, blah, blah. If they don't give you what you want, then, again, look at the day rates. If they don't give you what you want, then just jump to another company and tell them that you're a mid-level artist, and then you instantly give them the mid-level rate. So you can literally just, like, overnight, let me go back to the day rate bit. Overnight, you could go from 220 to 320 euros. Easy. If you've been at a company for like a year and 2 years, or 3 years, I mean, again, I don't want to kind of put years to it, but if you're doing basically, if you're hired as a junior and you've trained and practiced in the evenings, and then you're at a mid-level standard, well, you could jump from 220 to 320 a day easy, basically, by just leaving the company and telling them. So what you can do is you can actually jump between companies every time you want to go up a level. So junior to mid, you could hop and increase your day rate to the mid-level day rate I just told you about. Again, you could go from mid-level, so you've been there, you're doing senior shots now, mid to senior, and then you do senior to lead. And then at that point, it starts getting a bit tricky. Like senior to lead is even a bit tricky. Like generally companies want you to stick around for a while before you can do that. Some don't. Some will quite happily bring you in as a lead. But once you start getting from like lead to soup and that kind of stuff, you kind of just have to be at the company for like 5, 10, 15 years. It's kind of whoever can stick it out longest at that point. Or whoever kind of stays around the longest at the company gets the role. So yeah, it's just important to know those are basically the 2 strategies I've seen people do. You either stay at one company and move up, or you basically just keep hopping every time you feel like you're going up a role. Now again though, I'm kind of talking about a strategy that's got no feeling or emotion involved. So like you might go from a junior to a mid to one company, but actually you really enjoy the company, so you just stay there for a while. So that's absolutely fine as well. I just want you to make you aware of the 2 strategies that you can use. So what do you pick? Do you pick knowledge over money, or do you go for like just earn the biggest day rate possible and don't worry about getting better and being at a company where you're surrounded by people that maybe know a bit more than you? Well, it's not always the case where these kind of 2 things are exclusive. Sometimes you can earn decent money and learn from some of the best people in the industry. But actually, when you're starting out, if you're a junior compositor at the moment, I would personally say just pick knowledge. Like be at the best company in the world, working on the best stuff. Again, I'm not coming down to what you're going to enjoy the most necessarily. I'm not coming down to the company that you're going to love being at like the most. I mean, you may really love the companies that are doing the best stuff and the most knowledgeable, but again, this is a personal thing. But as a strategy, like you want to be picking the biggest projects possible, at the biggest names possible company-wise, learning from the best people possible, pretty much. Now, the great thing about TV is that's kind of not the case all the time now, because so many people are doing good TV and so many companies doing good TV now that actually you could be at a smaller shop working on a Marvel film or a Star Wars TV show or whatever it is. So actually you don't have to be at these big places in order to work on the cool stuff anymore. But just be aware that when you start in the industry, just pick knowledge over money, simply because, again, coming down to the rates, you could go from 220 to 320 if you pick knowledge, right? Because you're getting your speeds up and your momentum's going very high. So now it's pretty amazing because actually you can end up being a mid in like half the time as most other people. So I would really suggest doing that at first. And then after a while, you can start to decide. So like when you're a senior or a supervisor or a lead, you can start thinking, okay, like, do I want to, maybe I just do 2 or 3 months on this show or adverts to earn a bit of money. And it's kind of fun for a little bit, but I don't really learn as much potentially. And then I jump back onto a really complicated, tricky TV show or film or even a tricky advert that I know is going to be a bit mental, but I'm going to learn a ton of stuff. So there you go. So iterate. What do I mean by iterate? Well, at the end of each project, I always like to ask my supervisor, I'd basically just try and take him out for like a 10-15 minute coffee or something, or just go up to that's generally the best way to do it. You kind of want them out of the office so that they feel like they can actually talk properly rather than having to kind of be careful about what they say. And not because they're going to backstab people, but you'll see in a second. So I like to take them out for a coffee and I basically just ask them like for feedback, number one. They're generally not going to be, I mean, they'll give you some feedback, but sometimes they're not kind of like brutal enough. There's always my thing. It's like, no, I kind of really want you to be like, no, look, you're really bad at this, do this. So, I mean, luckily it was never, you're really bad at this, but it's just kind of, you never get that stuff. So what you want to do is I always like to ask them, okay, who did you think was the best comp on the show and why? And they might say someone that you did not even think was going to be the best comp on the show. So what I do now is when I'm on a show, I like to think to myself, okay, who do I think is the best comper on this show? And I make a note of why. Like, okay, I think they're the best comper because they're the most knowledgeable, they're able to tackle these problems, etc. And then when you go to have a coffee or, again now, a Zoom call with your 2D supervisor, like honestly, it's so interesting seeing who they thought the best compositor was, because I've never got it right so far, if I'm honest with you. And it's crazy. Like generally, in my experience, it's the people that were just got on and did it. Like they just made the shot work, basically, whatever they got. So that's something I've taken on board myself a fair bit. So it's just worth being aware of this. Like just ask them who they thought the best compo was, and then you can literally just think to yourself, okay, what was that compositor doing? And again, add it to your list of stuff that you need to get better at, and you've now got some actionable points on to improve when you're kind of being an Apple product. So it's a really great thing just to... The problem I find as well is it's very hard sometimes to know where you should improve after a while. Like when you're starting out, it's quite easy because it's like, okay, I need to get better at keying or CG compositing, etc. Once you've done a few years and you're good at that stuff, then it's like, okay, it's very niche things, or it's all the soft skills that I'm kind of talking about. So actually, if you ask someone, they might tell you something. It's like, okay, thank God. Like now I've got a to-do list. I've got something to aim for and to go for. So it's really important to do this. Just like iterate on your process. You can also iterate on how you, the process of what you do when you have a green screen key or when you go into dailies. Like just improve this process continually. Work out what went well when you went into dailies, or what went well on this show. Work out what you could have done better yourself, and also make those actionable points. So a lot of us in our time as a VFX artist, we're going to be freelance, right? We're like, I mean, even if we're on 3-month contracts or 6-month contracts, we've got like a salary of 40 or 50 or 60 or 70,000 pounds a year, we're still on kind of contracts. So it's really important that you think like a company. Like a company's job, like yes, the company's job is to make the best looking stuff, but actually they're just trying to make the biggest whack, basically. Like they're trying to make profit. So if they basically, like, if they want to increase their profit, they basically need to get their income to be very high and their outgoings to be very little. Their outgoings are mainly artists and licenses and infrastructure. So if they can get your rate down, then now they've just improved their profit. So how do you get your day rate up with that in mind? Well, if you can, let's say you're charging £200 a day, and let's say you make enough work for the company to make £500 a day. So you as an artist are being paid £200 a day, but you're making £500 a day for the company via like your shots. And okay, look, we thought this shot was going to be, we charged the client £1,000 for this, and you've managed to do it in 2 days. Great, you've made £1,000, and we're paying you £400 those 2 days. You've just made £600. Amazing, great, you've made that profit. So now, the bigger the amount of money you make for that company, the more your day rate can go up. It's as simple as that. The bigger the profit you make, the bigger the day rate goes up. So if you could do the compositing work of 10 people, well, you could charge a huge day rate, theoretically. I mean, I doubt VFX company's going to pay you the day rate of 10 people, but again, like, you could technically, you'd be making the profit of 10 people, so you could whack your day rate right up. So again, think to yourself, like, how do I add more value to the company? Like, how do I get my output up? Well, again, like learning new techniques, all of this stuff in order to kick out more and more stuff and better stuff quicker. If you can do that, then you're going to be able to whack your day rate up, because now you can basically make the company way more money. So it's really important. Like, the company isn't like trying to get your rate down because they're like belittling you, or like they're not doing it because of that. It's just, that's their job. Their job is to make profit at the end of the day. And by the way, it's you as a company's job to make profit as well. So you've got to push back on that, and you've got to get your rate up and realize that, just like the companies I show with the fashion show, the fashion stuff, like, okay, how can we actually get the rate up? Well, we've got all these qualifiers to do that so that we're less risky. So it's super important to actually think like a company, because you are, basically. And the more work you can kick out, and the better the work is you can kick out, and the trickier shots you can kick out, you've now made your company more profit, and therefore you can charge more a day. So hopefully that was useful. I've literally brain dumped a ton of strategies that I've been using over the last 10 years and made a note of. For those of you who are in the chat and looking at this now, yes, this will all be recorded, and I think that's probably why we don't have everyone in that signed up in this, because everyone's relying on it being recorded. So if you want any of my notes at all, you can find them on my website here at this URL, and you can just take those. It's got the day rates and all my notes based that I'm looking at while doing this thing. I've now got a bit of time to do a bit of a Q&A. If anyone has any questions, please put them in the chat, and I'll be happy to answer them. Anything at all that you want to ask. Ideally, nothing like super like nuke technical related, more kind of what we've been on the topic of so far. Any questions at all? Cool. People found it useful. That's good. I mean, the reason I did is because like no one talks about this stuff. It's crazy to me. And I mean, it's yeah, now you guys have got all these strategies. 10 years of me making little notes. I've got the books next to me. Any questions at all about anything? If you do have any questions, by the way, outside of this that you don't want to put in the chat, absolutely fine. Feel free to email me. It's jjparks, Parks, 76@gmail.com. Oh, cool. We've got some questions. So, do you know if remote working will carry on? Yeah, remote working is definitely carrying on. It's happening now. There's a few companies, big companies, who basically put a vote to their staff, and the staff decided that, hey, look, we want to be have remote possibilities full time. Whether are currently hiring remotely in the States, Northern America, because they need people and they can't get people into the country, and also it's really great for them because they haven't got to pay for hotels or flights or anything. So remote working is definitely here to stay, if I'm with you. It's a little tricky with subsidies because when you work for a company, let's say I work for a company in Canada, they can't claim the subsidies on me because I'm in the UK. So that gets a bit tricky. So they do kind of sometimes want you in the country. So for instance, to get the UK subsidy on you, as long as you're in the UK or England, then they're fine. So you could be anywhere in the UK and they can get the subsidy on you. But remote work is definitely here to stay, for sure. Like there's a ton of companies right now that literally wouldn't be able to hire all the artists they need if remote work wasn't a possibility, because they don't have the office space for it. And they don't have the, I'm using my computer to work, so they haven't got to buy that stuff. So next up, curious if I could talk about the current demand for compositors at the moment. Yeah, so it's insane, if I'm honest with you. Every company I know needs compers. Currently, companies that I've seen are trying to hold on to people for a year or 2 or 3 years because they know they have work coming up. Basically what's happened is, because TV work standards are high now compared to film, like ILM for instance, I've got a few friends at ILM, and the ILM film guys are working on ILM TV as well. They're just moving between. There's no difference now, basically. Like every artist moving between. So now what's happened is all the really good artists that can make the best stuff are now spread out. If you think about it, before they were maybe mainly bunched up in film, but now they're spread out. So it's very like there's not enough good people basically to go around. So everyone's just trying to hold on to people because they know there's an influx of work coming in with all the TV stuff. Like Disney Plus is going crazy, like Amazon, Apple, and then you've still got like the BBC, Sky, like all of this stuff. So it's just crazy right now. Like everywhere needs compers. So that's why right now is a really good opportunity to kind of get your day rates up, or leave and go to another company for sure. Like, or get a longer contract. It's insane. So someone else said, I've had a problem of not being able to show my work after being on big shows. That is a great question. So the problem is, so what Brett's asking is, okay, look, you've worked on a show. This happened a lot actually with my friends who worked on the new James Bond film. It was supposed to be out, I think, last year, and they postponed it. So they worked on this stuff and they can't put it in the show because it's not out yet. So if that happens, what you do is you basically, how do you respond to companies who don't want you to put your work up publicly? A lot of time companies will be okay password protecting your show on Vimeo. If not, then what you can do is just when you apply to the company, again, do Vimeo password protected, and you can even bring it in on a USB stick or something, your show reel, when you go in for an interview. And you can always say that you worked on it on your CV, etc. So that's not such an issue. If you're dealing with the worst thing in the world is when you work on a show and it gets canned, or again, like let's say like James Bond, for instance, like it's been delayed because of COVID. Okay, well now you can't use that stuff in your reel, and that's very frustrating. Obviously, you've got that stuff on your IMDb and on your CV, which is handy, but yeah, it can be tricky. So next up, day rates for lead compositors. So yeah, day rates for lead compers is a bit of an odd one because most of the time when you're a lead comper, you won't be on a day rate, like a freelance day rate, because you'll be more at the company for a while. I would personally add another like £50 onto the rates that I showed you there. If I'm honest with you, for lead rates. But again, it's quite tricky because generally you won't be hired as a freelance lead artist. Most of the time, you'll be a comper already at the company and they'll move you up into a lead position. So yeah, it's a tricky one for me to say in that respect on the lead role. Sorry. Feel free to drop me an email though, and I might be able to help you further with that one. Do you recommend any freelance websites to do extra gigs on the side? I personally don't do that. I have a few people who I know do. If I'm honest with you, they're, again, coming down to the like Burberry jacket thing. They work at big companies and they have an insane show reel, so they actually get approached to it. So unfortunately, I'm not like sure on websites to find freelance work. But again, I mean, I would personally go on like Kickstarter, Indiegogo, or Reddit, Filmmakers or something, and just find people to like see if they need a hand on their stuff. Day rate for roto prep, I would say it is probably going to be, so I know in the UK it's about 120 to 220, I'd say. Yeah, that's kind of the roto prep rate, I would say. So yeah, 120 to 220, I'd say is roto prep. Again, I'm not 100% savvy on that, but I would say it's roughly about that rate, if I'm honest with you. Oh, and if it was in the UK, I'd say it's probably like 100 to 150 to 170 a day. Again, I'm not 100% sure, but I'd say it's roughly that. Again, this is the best time. If you're not sure about these roto prep rates, email some people on LinkedIn, ask them some questions. Hey, I'm a roto prep artist working at this company, and you can ask them the rates. It's absolutely fine to do. Let me go to the end again, and we'll go through the questions. Will those starting out in the industry struggle to learn more senior level stuff if it's going remote? If I'm honest with you, no, because I learned the senior stuff, but when I was a junior, by opening up people's nuke scripts or importing them and just going through and and like just making a note of any techniques that they were using that I didn't understand, trying to figure them out myself. If I couldn't figure them out, I'd then drop them a message or something, or ask them in the room. Like, you can use the same strategy there. Just go over and talk to them, or just send them a message, and maybe you can do it like a Zoom call at lunch or for 10 minutes or something. Really, so I think that's fine. Like, just be looking at other people's Nuke scripts and learning from them, if I'm honest with you. Besides all this cool stuff that I've already shared, is there a particular tip for foreigners enjoy this upcoming hiring wave in the market next year? So I guess that means for people not from Europe or the UK to enjoy this upcoming hiring wave in the market. So that is a difficult one. Again, it kind of comes down to the subsidy thing again. If you're good, they probably aren't going to mind as much where you are. They kind of care about time difference. So you're probably going to have to wake up at crazy hours if you want to work for a certain company. And again, they can't get the subsidies on you, which might mean they try and knock your rate down a little bit, or they've got to really want you, basically, because they maybe can't get 30% of whatever they spend on you, basically, from the government. So I would try and get yourself in a position where you can maybe get into... and you don't have to, but it would be advantageous to get into a position where they can get the subsidies on you still, basically. But if not, the best thing to do, as I was talking about earlier, is building up a network so that people in the companies you want to work for know who you are, they know you're good, and then they'll be able to hire you. Again, like now more than ever, it's easier for them to hire anyone from around the world. Let's have a look. Are you finding real-time Unreal change the industry massively? No, not at all, man. Clients still don't know what they want, and just because they've shot it on set, they still change it. So yeah, that doesn't. It's not a big deal at all. It's not changed the industry really at all. I mean, it's kind of changed the industry a little bit because I've got compositor friends now who are on set grading the stuff that's on the screens, which is pretty cool. So now there's compos more at the start of the show, but it's not a huge deal. So let's go down. Hey Josh, what do you recommend for a junior mid-comper learn Python or Blink script in order? Oh, do you recommend a junior to mid-comper to learn Python or Blink script stand out? I would say a little bit of Python's useful, just a tiny bit. It's not going to make you stand out. What makes you stand out is making great looking images and tackling the kind of complicated nuke problems. And by that I mean kind of like, hey look, there's this tricky key and we managed to fix it, or something like that. Python and Blink script are kind of useful. I think Python's more useful than Blink script personally. Yeah, it can be useful. I would say do it if you enjoy it, basically. And Python could be a little bit useful because you can kind of automate some tasks. But so I'd learn a little bit of Python, for loops and things like that. But it's very, very basic stuff, for sure. But if you enjoy it, then go to town on it. Like, you should totally do it. Someone mentioned Nerdio. Yeah, that can be a good site for finding stuff. Do you know whether the demand for other positions in VFX, 3D pipeline animation, are also... Yes, they're all in high demand. By the way, this is another tip actually that I didn't mention. Compositing is kind of great because we're at the end of the pipeline, right? So if a company's hiring lighters, if you see a company on LinkedIn or wherever hiring lighting artists, then you know that in 1 or 2 months' time, they're going to need compers. Because the lighters directly before the compers, right? So I've got a friend of mine who's in the groom department, so he does digital hair, and I know that if his department is in need, they're going to need a bunch of compers in about 6 to 7 months' time. So you can basically work backwards of, okay, they're currently hiring animators, where are they in the pipeline? Well, they're about 4, 5, 6 months ahead because they got to animate the stuff and then they got to light it, texture it, etc. So, okay, cool. So they're about 6 months ahead in the pipeline. So I know in 6, 7 months time, that company's going to be needing compers. And then again, you could maybe start building your network based on that. There you go. Another cool tip. Where are we? What's the best way to do a showreel? It's like showing the shots from the movie or do some comp shots of my own using footage from the internet. I don't know how companies will judge a showreel. So if you're a student, then you basically want to. My advice. I've actually got I shot it and it's really terribly the audio's not good because I did it in the morning, so I just had a thought about it. But just find someone who just if you're a student, find someone who just went from being a student to a junior comper or a junior artist in the company you want to work at, and just see what they did in their showreel and kind of copy it. Don't like copy it and just download it and upload it. But okay, look, they've got a shot where they've comped in an explosion and done some projection work. Okay, cool. Well, I'll have a shot where I do some projection work as well. So literally just find someone's showreel who got the job you want and just copy it, like shot for shot. Just do your own versions of their shots, basically. That'd be my advice. And that, again, is a strategy to get into the industry quickly. But yeah, it's just really important to do that because you know already it's good enough. So the thing as well is like someone's already done this. Like you don't need to come up with a solution by yourself. It's like being in a kitchen and thinking to yourself, I need to bake a cake. Or you could just Google how to bake a cake and see someone that's done it before you, and they literally give you exactly what they did to get there. I would pick that one like over trying to guess. And that's actually really annoying. But whenever I see like these big talks at VFX conferences and they're like an hour long with recruiters and everyone, they're talking about, well, should you put in your showreel and should we change the order of this showreel? Just find someone that got the job you want and just see what they did and just take what they did basically and copy it. So what would be your advice for students because the pandemic did not manage to go to FMX and attend other events to meet face-to-face people in the industry to expand their network? Yeah, so Caroline, what I would do is go on LinkedIn and just email people your work and ask for feedback. That's basically what I would do. And if I'm honest with you, going to FMX and going to these events is good, but generally what happens is you end up meeting kind of like, you end up talking more to the students because the industry people kind of get bombarded a little bit. So it's very hard for them to kind of remember you and for you to stand out. So actually I would say go on LinkedIn and just ask for feedback and advice, etc. Or drop them an email if you can find their email address. Really important. Next up, would it be better to have had some level of interaction with an artist before approaching them on LinkedIn? No. Just feel free to email them on LinkedIn. Again, they're going to be quite busy and they might potentially not give you feedback, but it's worth trying. Like I know sorts of people that give advice. Like everyone remembers what it was like starting out. So yeah, and in regards to expanding your network, honestly, it's just doing stuff like dropping people a message on LinkedIn, asking for feedback. Okay, you get the feedback, you do the notes, and then you upload it again and ask for feedback again. Like that's pretty much it. If I was to just show you're keen and that you really want to do it. A company's looking for rotor prep in junior, mid, and senior level. When can I say I'm a senior rotor prep? Again, it depends. If you feel like you're doing senior rotor prep shots, then say you're a senior rotor prep artist. I would. And then, I mean, it's up to you. One thing I'd say as well is you could ask some other rotor prep artists what they would consider to be kind of like senior rotor prep shots. But yeah, if you feel like you're currently, if a company's looking for junior, mid, senior level rotor prep people, and the company's doing similar work to the one you're on at the moment, then if you're finding you can do most of the rotor prep work, then I'd say you could probably apply to the senior level, potentially. Now, again, it kind of depends on a few other things. I haven't worked with you, but I would ask in your company as well, kind of like what level they would consider you at as well. It's worth doing. So Leonard asked, why is the demand at such a high right now? Just because there's so much, but yeah, it's just because there's so much being made, and all of the TV show streaming websites are now competing against each other, which is kind of crazy, and they all want the best VFX, right? Like when you think about it, I remember I read this interview with Matt Damon the other day, and he was basically saying how a lot of the characters aren't actors anymore; they're kind of roles, like Spider-Man, Iron Man. These kind of like King Kong, Godzilla, etc. It's just CG. That's all it is. It's just a CG object. So, and the cool thing about this, like the reason why film companies like it is because now actors don't have leverage on them. So, like if an actor, let's say, decides to boycott Disney or boycott some company, well, it doesn't matter anymore. Okay, look, we've got Iron Man. It's just a suit. It's just a CG suit. We can totally do that. So that's why I think you're starting to see this more and more. So yeah, the demand's basically high because there's a ton of streaming companies that want good VFX. How easy is it to move into compositing from rotor prep? Being a rotor prep artist, companies think twice about moving them. Yeah, again, I spoke about this at the start. So honestly, just like, again, I spoke about Jack, who was in exactly that situation. Go out to people in rotor prep, go out to compers, ask for feedback on your comp work and this kind of stuff. Like basically people need to know that you are actually keen on doing comp and can see you're good. So you should be going up to people in your company, showing them your comp work, improving in the evenings and your new compositing stuff, going through their scripts as well. You can totally go through comp scripts with the company. If there's something you find in the script that doesn't make sense, go over to them and ask them, hey, look, would you be able to explain this to me if you have time? No problem at all. If not, but I just wanted to ask. Like, this is basically how you stand out, because no one else is doing that. It seriously works, that stuff. So Jake asked, what would you consider a senior rotor prep artist job? If I'm honest with you, I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I would say, like, I remember seeing some horror stuff on Ex Machina with like red markers in reflections and all of that kind of stuff. It's kind of crazy. So I mean, I guess it's just the most complicated prep stuff you see, when there's like markers in reflections and you're painting out that stuff and you have to rebuild an arm. I remember once I had a shot on Exodus where he pulled a sword out this river and there were water droplets on the lens and I had to paint out the water droplets. So it's like frame by frame painting. That's pretty painful. So yeah, it kind of depends, if I want to, on a whole bunch of stuff, the senior prep shop. But I'd say that kind of stuff is pretty tricky. For how long do you think this high demand of jobs in VFX will last? Do you think the industry will be still growing in a couple of years? Yes, I do think it will be growing in a couple of years. Basically, as long as Amazon, Apple, and basically all of the streaming websites and TV companies, as long as they're kind of still in the race a little bit, they're all going to be competing for resources, and they're all going to be trying to book up the VFX resources. The minute those, so like, let's say Netflix wins and Apple and Amazon stop doing their own content or anything like that, then it's probably going to drop a little bit. But yeah, it's kind of nuts right now. So, and it's just because that there's just so much kind of TV shows being created and films as well. Someone asked, how's life, Josh? How are you staying motivated and learning new things in between all these COVID era which we're living in? Well, it's actually way easier, man. I'm not having to do like a hour and a half train journey and bus journey every day. So it's actually way easier to learn stuff, if I'm perfectly honest with you. And it's been pretty fun because I've been able to work for companies like Trickster, who's in Germany. I wouldn't have been able to work with them before this. Important Looking Parts I'm working with at the moment. I'm going to be working for them for a little while. And they're in Sweden. And last time I worked there, I mean, it was really fun going to Sweden and working with those guys. But it is quite nice being able to kind of stay in the UK and work with them. I'm going to try and plan and go over next year to see everyone. But it's been pretty cool being able to work for these companies. Like, there's a ton of opportunities now that people wouldn't have. Like, I've got students that I used to teach one-on-one who are working at Weta or about to start working at Weta, who are in America, like the States, and they haven't got to move to New Zealand, which is crazy. Like, that'd never be an opportunity. Another friend of mine, basically, he had his, he basically took his London rent and he went, okay, I'm just going to buy a house in Wales. Like, he still works for ILM and he's living in Wales and he's got like this insane house in Wales. So it's pretty cool. Like, I think it's definitely different and there's stuff I miss. And it would be easy to maybe be a bit negative and say, well, look, there's all this stuff we're losing now. But actually, I think it's probably changed the industry for the better in a whole load of ways, for the companies and for the artists as well. For the companies, because they can hire up very quickly and they don't need the office space. And for the people, because now it's a little bit more freeing. Like, you can go live wherever you want to a certain extent. There you go. So... Hi, you talked about changing company for a better condition, but have you ever moved company before your current contract ended? Yeah, I have. Most contracts will basically say like the company can get rid of you within and let you, as long as they give you 4 weeks notice, and you can give them 4 weeks notice as well. As long as you explain to them why you're leaving and what it is, it's fine. One thing I'd say is like, don't leave. It doesn't leave like a good taste in. But you burn bridges basically if it's crunch time, it's the last month on a show and you're like, right, I'm going, I'm done. Like, that's not good to do. But if you're kind of at the start of a show and it's a bit quiet, then like, yeah, I think it's fine to do it, for sure. You can totally leave during your current contract. Probably know Tony Lyons. I do indeed. Worked with him at Trickster. I'm good friends with him. Have you ever felt yourself burning out on a job? Is there any advice you give to those that feel like a project might be getting a bit full on for someone? Yeah, if I'm honest with you, like, the biggest advice I give you and that I felt works with dealing with burnout is having something different that isn't VFX. And it might be like meeting up with people that aren't in the VFX industry, so you can't talk about it and moan about it to them, because they're like, look, like you start realizing, this is one thing I miss actually about work from home, is I used to, it's a weird thing to miss, by the way, maybe it's just me, but on the commute in, when you're going into London, or into central London, because I live in London, you could hear everyone moan about their like jobs, and you just be there like, okay, look, everyone's moaning about the job. Like, it's not me, it's just everyone's moaning about their job. You just realize that like it's insignificant, basically. Just it's okay. And also you should just be talking to people who aren't in VFX. Again, it just like gives you a break from everything. And that's the thing that, and I struggle with this as well, because I've got obviously a lot of my friends are in the VFX industry and we're super passionate about it and all this stuff. But actually, if I'm with you, like when we meet up, the first half an hour to an hour is all VFX stuff where we're getting caught up about what companies are doing, etc. But after that, that's when it starts getting like really fun, because it's like, okay, look, now we're done with that. Now we're just chatting and we're just friends meeting up, and it's all good. And obviously maybe a few drinks help with that as well. But it's just, I think having stuff other than that, like for instance, I try and play tennis like once a week, which is really great because I meet a load of people. They don't know what I do. We're just knocking a ball on a, like, it's just having other stuff other than VFX is really great for for dealing with burnout. And what I found as well is, because some people, for instance, they kind of, it's like binge drinking or something. Like they just go through and they do crazy hours, and then they'll just be stopping. Okay, I'm not going to do VFX for like 3 months, and then they'll come back and do crazy hours again. So what I find is better. It's just kind of, I mean, obviously it depends on the show and the company, etc. But I've been lucky. I haven't had to do crazy hours for a little while now, and when I have, it's just been for like a week or 2 weeks. So I personally prefer just kind of like a constant level of work, and then I'll just kind of try and do other stuff other than VFX as well to stop myself from burning out. Which some of the YouTube channels in VFX which you follow? I don't really follow any, if I'm honest with you. Yeah, I'm lucky. I mean, I work with people who I think are really good and some of the best in the industry, so I just learn from them. Yeah, I generally find a lot of the YouTube videos are kind of not accurate. So yeah, that's why I generally stick to in the industry and what we're using in the industry. So yeah, it's actually a big reason why I started making courses, by the way, because I got annoyed about stuff being taught wrong. So yeah, there's definitely a big divide between like public nuke VFXy stuff and in the industry stuff, and that gap's starting to close a little bit, but there's still a gap, because all the people in the industry are kind of busy doing that stuff. So yeah, what's my favorite ice cream? Oh my god, it's been a while. Probably Haagen-Dazs or Ben and Jerry's or something. So there you go. That was the last question. What a way to end it. So I really hope that was useful for you guys. I'm going to leave it there. Hopefully that was useful for you guys. Again, like I've shared a ton of stuff there that is maybe new to you, but please just be aware that like this stuff is just as important as the nuke techniques as well. So try and work on both if you can. And yeah, any questions at all, just feel free to drop me an email on my website, which is compostingpro.com. There's a contact sheet there, and you can just drop me a message there, or my personal email, which is jjparks, PARKS76 @gmail.com. So super, like it's great to kind of see you all. Hopefully you're all doing well wherever you are in the world. So it was kind of amazing this, because obviously I kick the newsletter out, but it's I never really get to talk to you guys at all. So it's kind of cool. And ideally next time I want to try and do this on Zoom. We'll see how that goes. So hopefully that's useful. There'll be a recording. I'll try and kick it out to everyone. If you think it'll be useful for anyone, please feel free to share it or anything. And yeah, any questions, feel free to drop me an email. Have a good one, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure. Hopefully that was useful.